All right, in this lecture, I'm going to go over the leadership in energy and environmental design, commonly known as LEED, and the Living Building Challenge. And so we'll look at the difference between the two, and generally speaking, how do you measure the sustainability of buildings? As you'll see, there's a lot of sustainability implications for buildings. We'll look at the differences between the two, and then really dig into some of the details of each. How does LEED work? How does Living Building Challenge work? Why does the Living Building Challenge use a flower as their symbol? And also consider these concepts of net zero energy, net zero water, no red listed products, and habitat exchange, all part of the Living Building Challenge. Okay, so let's start with these two sort of fundamental questions that will help frame this discussion. So I want you to think, first of all, number one, if you wanted to measure how, quote unquote, how sustainable a building is, how would you do it? What would you look at? What kind of things would you look at? Number two, if you took, say, two buildings or any number of buildings, and you want to determine which is the most sustainable, quote unquote, sustainable out of all of them, how would you do that? Like, so what sort of things would you look for? So I want you to just take a minute or two, jot down some ideas, and then we'll go over, some of the concepts and how that relates to LEED and living buildings. So go ahead and press pause. So you could do a bunch of different things. You can measure, okay, so how are they getting their energy? Where are they getting their energy from? What's the carbon footprint of the building? You could look at how they're, are they capturing water? Are they overusing water? Are they wasting water? You could look at how they're growing food, and you can look at the materials they use. You can look at the waste they're generating, the emissions they're generating, how it connects to the rest of the city around. I mean, there's all kinds of things. There's almost innumerable things that you could consider for sustainability because, as you know now, sustainability is such a broad topic. But the key to all this is if you want to determine how sustainable a building is, you need a way to measure it. You need metrics, okay? And so these metrics are going to measure any number of things. And as you'll see, LEED is one very big suite of metrics put into one certification, and as are living buildings. Okay, so it's going to be a combination of things, and it's because sustainability is so broad, it's hard to sort of pin it down, and that's why there are so many different types of rating systems out there. So let's go over LEED first. So you want to jot down leadership in energy environmental design, or LEED. I'll always refer to it as LEED. You always see it referred to as LEED out in the field. So LEED is a point-based rating system, okay, that indicates the sustainability of a building or neighborhood. There's actually different types of LEED certifications. There's single family, there's multifamily, there's interior design, there's all neighborhood design, there's all kinds of stuff. But the basic premise behind LEED is you get these points, and I'll show you an example of an actual scorecard here in a minute. You get points for different sustainability characteristics, right? Your water use, where you get your energy from, the waste. Can you use the building for educational purposes? What are the level of toxicity in the materials? Are there bike racks that promote riding your bike? I mean, there's all kinds of things here, and you'll see the scorecard's really comprehensive. But the point is, you just sort of pick and choose and say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to add solar panels, I'm going to add a little mini wind turbine, I'm going to use local building materials, I'm going to use these non-toxic, but you know what, I'm not going to really worry about water, I'm not really going to worry about growing my own food. Okay, so you can pick and choose. Okay, and at the end you tally it all up, and your points indicate which level of certification you have. And there's 4 levels of certification. You want to jot these down. You have your certified, which are 40 to 49 points, silver 50 to 59, gold 60 to 79, and then platinum, which is the highest level certification, 80 plus. So you can see it's relatively intuitive. Higher score means more quote unquote sustainable, right? Um, and it's pretty hard to get a platinum certification. Um, all of this, by the way, was created by the U.S. Green Building Council. Still a very active organization, and there's actually local branches of this all over the place. Where I sit from here in Delaware, in the Northeast here, there's the Delaware Valley Green Building Association. They do or Green Building Council, excuse me, and they do all kinds of stuff. They do workshops, they do building tours, they promote, they do a lot of really good things around here in terms of the green building industry. Okay, so that's your basic premise for LEED. You pick and choose which aspects of sustainable design to integrate it into your building. And then there's an actual scorecard that will tally up all your points and tell you your certification. So let me show you this scorecard here. Okay, so this is an actual scorecard. I am not going to go over all this, but I just want to show you, give you a sense of how comprehensive this is, and then I'll put a link in the lesson this week. But you can see there's all these different categories and your different point totals, right? So your planning, you get points for planning, durability, right? So you can get up to what do we got here? Yeah, you up to 11 points for this planning, durability. You get points for innovation, right? So there's all kinds of things here. Which this is, are you linked to other aspects of the community and so forth. And here's the really, site stewardship, up to 22 points. So erosion control, not disturbing too much land, no invasive plants, landscaping design, irrigation reduction, heat island effects, surface water management. Here's pest control, compact development. There's a whole thing up to 15 points for water efficiency. So water use, you have your energy and atmosphere up to 38 points for this. Materials and resources, so using natural building materials, or are you not putting too much in the landfill. Environmentally friendly products. I mean, you can see this goes on and on. Indoor air quality, awareness and education. So if you use your building for education, you can get a couple of points, right? Okay. And this is, I mean, this again is an official, this is the U.S. Green Building Council sheet. Okay. So you can download this, it's publicly available. Anyway, I just want to give you a sense. So if I'm building a building, I can just, I can pick this, I can pick this, and I'm like, I'm gonna ignore all this framing. I don't care about framing. I'm gonna do this, right? I don't care about environmentally friendly products. So I'm gonna skip that, right? So you can pick and choose what you want, and at the end you'll total up all your points. That tells you your level of certification. Okay, so that gives you kind of a sense of what it is. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details here, but as I said, it's not just for new buildings. It's like new construction, but interiors and schools and retail, healthcare. So there's all these different categories. And those, remember that those performance areas, they were all on that checklist, right? So these are sort of the different categories of sustainability that you can try to achieve, okay? And there's a reading in here that kind of shows you some of the pros and cons of this. And I want you to kind of think about, like, is this the best way to go about it, or is there kind of some better ways to establish sustainability? And so I posted a couple of videos, and there's links in here that you can watch these videos to give you some case studies of buildings. But LEED buildings can be any size, they can be any type, I mean any location. Something that's really small, like a 5,000 square foot place in Delaware, and then this is up in Media, Pennsylvania, not too far from where I am in Wilmington. A couple 100,000 or over 100,000 square feet, educational complex, right? So it can be anything from a really sort of, not a very big building to really large, huge buildings. And there's a lot of really big LEED buildings around. And you can actually go to LEED's website, and they have a compendium of all the LEED buildings, and you can find LEED buildings. I mean, they're all over the world, and they're all shapes and sizes. So they're not hard to find. Okay, there are LEED buildings absolutely everywhere. It's a really common certification to get. It's sort of the original sustainable building certification. So there's a lot of them. So to summarize for LEED, remember you pick and choose which aspects to address. Then you earn points, and then you get your level of certification after they total up all your points. Kind of one of the drawbacks is you do not need to satisfy all aspects. So if you're really into fully holistic sustainability, this is not necessarily the best one. Because you can get a stop at certified, and it's like not even address water use or not even address non-toxic. You can have like, all these VOCs poisoning your air in your building, and you can still get a LEED certification. Like that's not truly sustainable, right? So it's not as holistic as some of the other ones. The other thing that's important to know about LEED that I should have mentioned earlier is that certification. You get your certification before you actually move in and start using the building. Okay, so LEED, it's like you design the building, you build the building, or you renovate it or whatever, and then they say, okay, hold on, don't use it. We have to certify it, and then they certify it, and they say, okay, now you can use it, right? So it's like you get your certification, then you move in, and like you have a LEED building. Okay, so that's LEED. So living building challenge is similar but quite different. So there's a video that I posted that you should watch if you haven't already, and he starts with these two fundamental questions. What if every single act of design and construction made the world a better place? And what does good look like? And living building challenge is a very holistic, very aggressive. It's the most holistic and difficult to get sustainable green building certification in the world today. Um, there's a bunch of different ones out there, and this is by far, I would say, maybe not by far, but it is the most robust one, the hardest one to get. He really, the original intent of this was really just to completely change the relationship between the built environment and the natural environment to the point that you're integrating them together, and if at all possible, moving beyond just being sustainable to being regenerative. And you want to jot down that term regenerative. We'll revisit this term when we talk about food. But regenerative means you're not only not damaging, but you're making things better. So how can we build buildings to actually make the environment around it better? Okay. Their goal is to completely eliminate the negative impacts of humans on the environment, improve health, improve habitat, improve energy, using nature as a model. So this is really important. A lot of living buildings inspiration comes from nature. And you jot down that term biophilia. So biophilia means using nature as a model, but also means surrounding yourself with natural-like conditions. This has become a kind of a new big thing in architecture, to have like living walls and that sort of thing. Um, They say that all development projects should use nature as the measuring stick for performance. This is a really important concept. If you remember back to passive design, we talked about how you want to use the ambient natural conditions to your benefit as opposed to sort of fighting against them. Well, with living buildings, their model is nature because nature is self-regenerating. It only uses renewable energy. There's no such thing as waste in nature. So all the things, if we could build buildings that as close as possible mimic what nature does, no waste, 100% renewable energy, always regenerate without additional outside resources. If we could have buildings do that, we'd be in a really good place, and we would end up doing less damage to the environment and creating better society overall. Okay. And I'll let you read through all of this, but it's again, really robust, just aggressive. Like we want to change how buildings are even thought of, right? So buildings, instead of being like this thing where you wall yourself off of nature and you control your environment and you actively heat and cool, get away from that whole notion of like nature's out there and we're in here. Like we want to integrate that as much as possible. So reinventing the relationship with the natural world. Okay, reestablishing ourselves as separate, not separate, but a part of nature. Okay, so just totally rethinking how we think about buildings. Okay, so I want you to watch that video if you haven't already. Remember, the idea here is to have regenerative buildings. Okay, and the buildings shouldn't be even thought of as things, right? They're just like they're flipping the script. Like buildings shouldn't even be things. They shouldn't be these like artificial, totally artificial, man-made things that just do all this damage to the environment, create all this waste, use all this excess energy. Like we need to get away from that and just think of ourselves as integrating as seamlessly as possible with nature, and recognizing that we're a part of nature is really important. And they use the flower as their symbol, and he mentioned this in the video, but the importance of the flower is that number one, if you think about how the energy that a flower uses, it only uses the energy from the sun that hits it, right, using through photosynthesis. So that's all the energy it needs. So if we could have a building that all the energy it needs is the sun that hits it, we'd be in really good shape. Number two, it only uses the water that's immediately around it, right? So a flower doesn't have, importing water from the next garden over, right? Like it captures the rainwater around it, and that's all that it has. It'll use the groundwater as needed, but ultimately it's in balance with the local water system. And also it's beautiful, right? Like flowers are very aesthetic, and as you see, one of the aspects of living buildings that you need to satisfy is beauty. Okay, so flowers are really important. And there's all kinds of aspects to living buildings. I'm not going to go over all of them. Some of the key ones I want to point out. Number one, you have to have net positive, at least net zero energy. Okay, it means you have to generate as much renewable energy as you use. And actually, the new standards, you have to generate more energy than you use, and from renewable sources. They actually have to capture more water than they use on site. So net positive water means they actually capture the only water they use on site. They have to capture an equal amount, actually a little more, through rainwater collection. Okay, they have to treat stormwater on site. They can't dump stormwater into the local sewer system. No red listed products is really important. There's this whole list of toxic materials that you're not allowed to use that are really commonly used in buildings. There's all these other things like waste management. I thought this is really interesting and important. This habitat exchange notion is that you're required to set aside an equal amount of habitat forever. Okay, so if I have a 10,000 square foot building, I have to have 10,000 square feet of natural land purchased and on like a no development um, lease forever, right? So you never can develop on that land, so permanently set aside. And there's a lot more of that as well. And so, that's one really big difference with LEED is that it's more holistic. Okay, so they go to the nth degree for everything. But two really important uh, aspects that are different than LEED, and you want to jot this down. Number one, in order to get a full living building certified building, you have to satisfy every single category. So remember that LEED scorecard? If that was a living building scorecard, you would have to hit every single one of those, okay? And you cannot. If you don't hit every one, if you get 99%, that 1% will prevent you from getting your certification. The other really important difference is that you have to actually use the building for 12 consecutive months and prove that you are achieving those standards that you said you would. So net zero or net positive energy, net positive water. You can say, look, hey, I got this catchment system, I got this nice solar array in my roof. I'm going to generate more energy than I use. Okay, that's great, but we're going to wait a year, make sure that you're actually generating more energy than you use. Otherwise, again, you can do all this, and if you don't actually generate more energy than you use, you wouldn't get your certification. So very difficult to get. There's not that many full living buildings in the world, as you'll see in the assignment this week. There are other levels of certification. So just to be clear, the full living building, you have to do all these things. You have to live in it for a year and so forth. But there are quote-unquote petal certifications, so you can do like net zero energy, net zero water. We're not really going to get into those because it's really the living building standard. That is that full living building certification. That's what they think is going to, change the whole buildings industry. Okay. And these are the so-called petals, right? So there's 7 petals. Place, water, energy, health, materials, equity, and beauty. So you see equity is actually a part of it, and beauty. That's that whole flower thing, right? But equity, there are all these standards to supporting a just and equitable world. So again, super holistic, really robust. And this is just a sort of the summary matrix. If you look at their, actual evaluation matrix, it's a lot more complex. But you can see for a new building, you have to hit all. See, there's 7 petals, right? Place, water, energy, health, happiness, materials, equity, beauty. And then there's imperatives within each petal. And you have, for a new building, the dark orange is required. So for a new building, you have to hit every single aspect. Okay? Carbon reduction, net positive energy, healthy indoor, access to nature, responsible materials, red list, responsible sourcing, all this stuff, right? Beauty and biophilia, inclusion, universal access, education, inspiration. All of these have to be hit in order for you to get that full living building certification. So as you can see, it's very, very robust. Okay, so there are some living buildings out there. Okay, there's not a whole lot, but here's an example of one. This is preparatory school in Hawaii. 6,000 square feet. You can see these buildings are different. They have a little aesthetic quality to them, and they have to, do things. There's a energy flow chart that you can take a look at. And there's actually linked to some case studies here. But this is just to show you a few quick examples. Another one, then this one you'll dig into a little bit more in your assignment this week. The Frick Environmental Center in Pittsburgh. So it's a 16,000 square foot. It's kind of like a nature center. Um, and as you can see, it's like it just they just look different, right? So there's definitely this quality to them that it's when they say it's a living building, like, oh, okay, that makes sense because they all have this unique quality to them and these natural materials. You see the sight lines are kind of like in line with nature. They're really like integrated into the local environment. So they're really cool buildings, all of these. And I encourage you to explore more of them in the course content this week. Okay, so to summarize living buildings, remember, in order to become a full living building, you have to satisfy all aspects, all of those imperatives, and all of those petals. You cannot just pick and choose. And these include net positive energy, net positive water, no red listed products, that habitat exchange, and a lot more. As you saw, there's, I think, like 23 imperatives. Again, one big important difference between this and LEED is that you only get certification after using the building for 1 year. Um, and they use nature as a measuring stick. So nature is the model for these living buildings, and they want to move beyond sustainable to regenerative. Okay, so that's it for this lesson on LEED and living buildings.